September is Suicide Awareness Month, an important time to bring attention to an issue that affects countless lives but is often overlooked. Today, I'm honored to have Jason Dyke, whose organization, Carsons Village, was born out of tragedy but is dedicated to hope and healing. Jason's loss of his 11-year-old son, Carson, ignited a mission to support families through their darkest moments. We'll explore how Carsons Village provides not just logistical help, but emotional lifelines to families navigating grief, and how we can raise awareness to anyone currently dealing with the loss of a loved one. Thanks for joining. And, it's coming down to the end, and I wanted to get you on here to talk about your story, and also what Carsons Village does, which is just more than suicide prevention, because it's more than that. But I want you to share your story about how, what led you to create Carsons Village and what got you here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, on April 28th of 2017, my life changed forever when I lost my son, Carson. It was a Friday. He had a bad day at school, came home. He was not in a real good mood. We were going to go see some work at a neighbor's backyard, and he didn't want to go with us. So April and I took our middle son over to the neighbor's backyard and left him. We said we'd be back in about 30 minutes. I was getting hungry, so Ryan and I left April and came back to the house to get him. I went upstairs, and I'd built him a loft for Christmas. Had a custom headboard, footboard, safety rail going up down the side, little ladder going up, desk underneath. And when I walked in to get him, I found him he had hung himself with a pair of pajama pants. He was 11. And so I took him down. I tried to give him CPR. Ryan had to call 911. The police and paramedics got there. They took over. And it was surreal. I remember sitting there watching these people walk through my house and take care of Carson. And I said, I need to go get April. And he said, well, if you leave a crime scene, we may not let you back in. And so I didn't want to leave Carson. And so finally they took him downstairs and started putting him in the ambulance. And I got in my car, went around the corner, and April was wondering where we were and why we hadn't come back for her. So she was walking down the street with her iPhone flashlight on, and I stopped, and I walked over, and I told her what happened, and she just screamed and fell to the ground, and I picked her up and put her in the car, and we turned the corner, and it was dark, and all the lights were going off for the ambulance and the fire truck and the police cars in front of our house, and we didn't get to see him then. So they went to the hospital. We went and got my oldest, who was a trainer for the Capel High School softball team. They were in a softball game. And we went over to West, Old West at the time, picked him up, told him what happened, and then we drove to the hospital. And we got there, and they pronounced him dead. And it was a horrible night, horrible night.
Wow. And were there any indications or anything like that on end?
Not that we knew. April has her doctorate in education, and she works for Capel. She's a diagnostician, and she's been in the education industry her entire career, and she didn't see anything. I didn't see anything. He was a good kid, straight A's. He was wound a little tight. He always had checklists. He always did his homework on Friday so he could relax on the weekend. He got 98s and 99s, and he did all the stuff. And we always joked that he was raising himself. We didn't have to do anything. He took care of everything himself, and it was tough. And that night when they pronounced him, I went to the nurse and said, all right, what do I do now? And they said, call a funeral home. A funeral home will walk you through the process. And so we walked outside, and we called my family, we called April's family, and then we called our bus family. And I called our bus family because we own a Texas A&M shuttle bus with 5 other families. It's a 37-foot, 46-passenger bus. We ripped all the seats out. We built a bar inside it. We tinted the windows, and we use it for tailgating at A&M football games. And this is a group of friends I've known for 30 years. And our kids have all grown up together like first cousins. We've gone, literally on probably 120, 30 trips together. We do 4 football games in the fall, baseball game in the spring. We go tubing in the summer. We've gone to the coast and Florida and all over the place. And they came in town and they took care of us. And they found a funeral home for me. We ended up using Rolling Oaks here in Capel. And we went to the funeral home, and I remember they tried to sell me this $800 basket of bouquet of flowers to go on top of the casket. And I remember thinking, I need to buy these flowers because I don't want someone to think I didn't love my son. And my friend said, no, we're going to put an A&M flag on the casket instead. And that meant more to me than a bunch of dumb flowers ever would have.
Right.
And after we got through the funeral and we were past everything, I realized how fortunate I was to have the group of friends that took care of us and did all those things. And so I wondered if there was a nonprofit out there to help families, and you do what everybody does. You ask the Google. So I Googled it, and I couldn't find an organization that helped families after the passing of a loved one with live help like I had. And so I've owned several businesses in the past, and I thought I could start a nonprofit to do this. And so Carson passed April 28th. In May, I pitched the idea to the hospital that we took him to. And then by June, I had my 501c3. I spent the rest of 2017 getting all my ducks in a row. And we referred our first family by the Capel Police Department in January of 2018.
Wow. And how did that experience go for your client, that first client, and then clients that came afterwards?
It's funny. We went and sat in the living room with the family here in town. It was somebody had lost their mother. And, early on, I didn't know what the model was going to be like. So we actually literally had stickers to put on the lasagna pans so you know who brought them. We had sign-in sheets for people. We had all kinds of tactile things that we would bring to the family. Mm-hmm. And after about 6 or 7 families, I realized I can't sit in the living room of every single family we help. I was getting calls from Fort Worth. I was getting calls from, Del Rio and El Paso, and you just can't drive and see those people. Mm-hmm. So we switched, and now everything we do is virtual. So we call, text, and email all through a Microsoft tablet Surface, and everything is done through Salesforce. And now we help families. We can help any family anywhere in the country, and we've helped families in all 50 states and most of the U.S. territories.
That's great. I want to talk about the specifics about how you do that. Being a father, we just talked about my son, my daughter. I've got a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. It's just, you went through it. It's shocking, and what's so shocking is that you didn't even see anything coming. You know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. You had nothing with bullying or anything like that.
Not that we know of.
Yeah,
not that we know of.
And he had never expressed any because my oldest daughter is a bit of more of a warrior. My son's like outgoing. He doesn't worry about things. But my oldest is a little bit in her own head. And I'm always like, the anxious side of me is always worried about things like that. And so wanting to coax communication and open communication, but the fact that there wasn't anything there, is, I'll admit, I'll say it's scary, because
it is scary.
Yeah.
It is scary.
Trying to have any idea of what it's like almost you have to prod. Is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong? And you don't want to prod, but with your kids, but at the same time, it's like you want to find out if there's anything you can do to prevent that kind of stuff.
It was tough. At the time, he was going through puberty, and I think he was wound a little tight and had all these emotions he didn't know how to deal with, and just it had a bad day, and it all came to a very poor decision. But
right.
So my board chair, I met him in Leadership Dallas. We were Leadership Dallas class of 22, best class ever, by the way. And the night we met, they had actually had to put their daughter in a facility because she was hurting herself. And we were talking, and he was, beside himself, right? He's at this event. There's nothing he can do. He can't go see his daughter. He can't do anything. So he stayed at the event, and we were sitting there talking. And I said, this is going to sound weird, but be grateful, because you got a chance I didn't get.
Right.
And it still gets to me. I didn't get a fighting chance, and Trey got a fighting chance, and his daughter's doing wonderful now, and everything got turned around.
And they were blindsided too by that, I assume. Yeah. Guys, if you're liking the content, please chuck a like on the video, and also don't forget to subscribe. That really helps me with the algorithm to get this video viewed by more of you guys. All right, back to the video. Have you noticed, since you've been doing this since 2017, or since 2018 roughly, so that's going on almost 5 years now. Have you noticed, and I do want to touch on all bases of what Carsons Village does, but have you noticed on the suicide thing with kids, as far as clients goes, has that ramped up as far as the percentage of your clients that are coming to you with loss? Have you noticed an uptick in the last 8 years?
Well, we help families with any kind of loss.
Right.
And so a lot of times when I talk about Carson and my loss, they think that's what we focus on, but it's not. It could be a miscarriage or all the way up to a 90-year-old grandmother. And so we help everybody across the board, but we have seen, I don't go back and track specifically percentages of what it is, but we have seen suicide by kids. And I'll tell you, I helped the first 200 families that we supported, and now we have a team of advocates that help families both in English and in Spanish. And every now and then I have to take one just for whatever reason. It's somebody that's in Capel or somebody I'm close to. And every now and then I'll get a 10 or 11-year-old child that either passed or took their own life. And it's tough. It's tough. It really brings back the memories of what I went through with Carson. And I've managed to handle the other types of loss, and I can deal with that a whole lot better. But when it's especially when it's a little boy that's 10 or 11, it's tough.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, on the good side, giving back to the community like you're doing, how many clients would you say you're helping, or families are you guys helping a year or so? Or how do you measure?
So the first year we helped 83 families. Last year we helped nearly 2,300.
Oh,
and
wow.
then we're at about almost 7,200 families that have been referred to us to date.
Wow. And now it's a national organization.
It's a national, yeah.
That's great because you can help people remotely.
Yep.
So you mentioned earlier about the lasagna stickers. Can you talk more about that? I'm sure that's involved with how the community gets involved with their services to help. Or?
Well, so that was really the early onset of our first model, and we've remained true to the vision that no one should face loss alone. But how we do that has evolved over time. And, like any kind of business, you start off thinking, oh, it's going to be blue, but then it's too dark and too light, and maybe you need some yellow, and it evolves over time. And so we have gotten away from the stickers and from the books. I do have a box in my house of all the old stuff, just so I can go back and kind of laugh at our first brochure or copies of our first website that we did. And we've come such a long way. But now the new model is virtual. So all my advocates have, as I said, the Microsoft Surfaces, and we can call, text, and email all through that. It's all captured. We have all the data to track for the folks that we have. So we've really matured and then added a bunch of additional services that we didn't have before.
Could you walk me through, like, say a family's experienced loss and then they reach out to you guys, kind of like the start to finish process, you know, and then the services that you just mentioned that you've added recently?
Well, so we have a lot of partners. So we've had referrals from over 300 different organizations, but we've got certain partners that we work with. We have agreements with, like Baylor Scott and White is one of our first ones that we had. And so we work with them, and if a patient passes, then usually it's the chaplains will give us a call, and they can either call or send a referral in through our website. We try to get in contact with the family as soon as possible so that before they start making decisions, because if they've already made decisions about funeral home or other things, we can't be as impactful on them in that phase.
Right.
So, but what we'll do is we'll call and talk to them. And I mean, basically there's a kind of a script we go through. Do you want a burial or cremation? Have you thought about where you want to go? Do you have a connection to a religious establishment? Have you thought about a cemetery? We get all that information together from them, and then we'll call 2 or 3, 4 funeral homes, get pricing for them, figure out what the cost is going to be at the cemetery. And then we'll talk to them. And I always tell the families, and this is really important, don't release your loved one until you have a plan. And sometimes they're not thinking, they just want to check boxes off, and they go, oh, sure, funeral home ABC sounds great because it's the first one on the list. Well, it may not be the best one for them. And so we talk to them about all their options. We come up with a plan. Once we have a plan, then we have them release their loved one, and then we start the process. And so we have what we call direct support, which is passing to the funeral. And so that's when our advocates work with them to get through that phase. And we want to make sure not only do we help them find resources that maybe they're unaware of, we want to make sure they get the right funeral home that meets their emotional and financial needs. We want to make sure they understand what all the costs are. And I tell families all the time, I don't care what you spend. You can spend $1, you can spend $20,000. I just want to make sure you understand what you're spending so that you know and prepared, and you don't have to go into debt because you didn't realize that you were getting something that was going to cost more than what you thought it'd cost.
Right.
And then when families come to us, the 2 big things they want to know is, where do I go and how do I pay for it?
Right.
And then once you get past that, you can start talking to them about, are there kids in the family? Do you need age appropriate language to tell the kids about what's going on? So we have resources for that.
Oh, wow.
And then we can talk about mental health resources for after the fact. And, I always use the phrase, like flight attendants on a plane, they always say, put your oxygen mask on before you put your child's oxygen mask on. Well, you've got to take care of yourself mentally first before you can take care of your kids. Because if you're not in a good spot, you won't be there for your kids. And so we'll make sure they have the resources they need.
And in your experience, how much has hooking them up with that kind of mental health help help them proceed and move on and kind of make all the decisions? Have you noticed a positive impact?
We have, and we track it. But during that direct support phase, Usually it's too soon for mental health support because we let them know what's available.
Yeah.
But you're in a, I was there. You're in a daze. You can't think. You can't function. You can't do anything, and you have to rely on other people to help you.
Right.
And so once the funeral's done, every family gets a phone call 30 days after, and that's usually when friends and family have gone home. You're sitting on your couch. You're trying to figure out how to get on with your life and what you're going to do, what your new normal is. And we give families a call 30 days out and just check in on them, see how they're doing. If they're doing great, then you're fine and they're back to work and no problem. Then we say we'll call you quarterly, and they'll get a quarterly call for up to 2 years. If they are struggling or have thoughts of self-harm, which we've probably run into about a couple handful of times, 20, 25 times maybe, then we have to step in. We have to get them the appropriate assistance to make sure that they're okay. We've had to do welfare checks before for people that have made comments. So it can be tough on the first 30 days.
On that front, do you just team up with like the local organizations for like the suicide hotline and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes we had to call. Actually, this is a broken system a little bit. We had a situation we needed to do a welfare check in Phoenix, but if you call 911, you get Dallas. And 911 Dallas can't transfer you to Phoenix.
Oh, right.
And you can't call the 911 in Phoenix. So the only thing you can do is call their non-emergency number and get put on hold for 30 minutes. And so there's no way to call a 911 in another city, and there's no.
Is there like because I know you can get like Google numbers, like virtual numbers. I wonder if you can establish yourself in a specific city. That's
we've been trying to figure out how to solve for that.
Because I know that when you Google phone you can use, and it uses your phone as a proxy to use that, and I think you may be able to pick your area code, and that may be able to be a workaround. Just throwing that out there. I don't know.
I'll have to look in that. Yeah, we that was a little bit of a cluster trying to figure out. We finally got out there. Got in touch with the police. They did the welfare check. It was fine. But it was a little bit of a scramble trying to figure out how to get in touch with the police in another city.
Yeah, I bet that's gotta be crazy.
But so anyway, so we go through, we talk to them, call them up 30 days out, and if they're okay, great. If they're not, they need additional services. We offer group support twice a month, virtual group support. We have a peer-to-peer program where we'll pair people up with similar losses, so they have someone that they can talk to. We have a partnership with BetterHelp, which offers online counseling, and they get 3 free months for that. And then we've got, if they need articles about, how to deal with grief, what grief is, anything at all that you think of under the sun, we've got an article written about it, and we'll send them links to those articles. We'll make sure they have what they need. And then as we call them back on that quarterly basis, we have a list of questions we ask in a conversational way. Hey, you mentioned you like to play golf. Are you back to playing golf again? You like to read books. Are you back to reading books? And then we take all that data in, and then every time we call them and do a little survey, we can track the data points as to how they're progressing through their grief.
That's great. So you mentioned there's a support team. Is there a way that anybody watching could support, or in any way, whether it's volunteering?
We would love. So we're constantly looking for what we call our villagers, and those are people that are paired up with someone with a loss. So you can go to carsonsvillage.org, and under one of the options at the top, you can volunteer. Mm-hmm. It's great. You've got to be at least 2 years out of your loss before you can volunteer. But once you're past that point, we look for people, and then, like I said, we try to pair people up with similar losses, like a mom that's had a miscarriage with another mom, or a dad that had a child take their own life with another dad. And because especially suicide, that can be very shameful, and people don't want to talk about it.
Right.
And so having them talk to somebody that's been through it, understands what they're going through, that's a really powerful thing that'll help them start to heal.
That's a great idea. What about volunteers who haven't lost anybody, or may not be within that time frame, or lost any family, but want to help in one way or another? What can they do?
So we've got some other things. If we have volunteers that work, we just had our golf tournament last Friday, so we had volunteers out there for that. We had North Texas Giving Day on Thursday, so we have people that help and volunteer with that. We have a committee for the golf tournament where they go get prizes and do things for us. The golf tournament we had on this past Thursday, we had it out at Bear Creek West Golf Club, and we had both sides filled up. So we had it was 276 golfers and about 25 volunteers. So it was a lot of fun. It was our 7th annual one, and we have a great time, but that does take a lot of work to do, and we have volunteers that help us with that as well.
Okay, that's awesome. And you mentioned earlier about being in a daze after it happens. I can imagine that like a lot of times people are blindsided, not realizing the costs that can be associated with a funeral. Is there, and all the service, not just the funeral, but everything leading up to it. Are there any resources for people who are, financially in need, and what can those people do to?
That's tough. There really isn't any. There's not a resource out there to pay for the funeral of a middle-aged man that passes. I mean, Unfortunately, it's not there. There are various resources in specific instances, like FEMA, if it was COVID. If it's a child, there's a lot of resources for children that have passed. And we have all those in our database. So as soon as something happens, we check our database to get the resources of the family. But it's hard. You've got to really go to, if you go to have a religious establishment, sometimes they'll pass the hat and help out, or some kind of local charity may lean in and give a few $100, or sometimes the hospital chaplains have access to some money. So sometimes you kind of have to cobble it together. We work with them on that. And then we also will build them a family support page. And so what that does is it's you set it up. We'll put a picture of the loved one on there. We'll put all the information about the funeral and what's going on. And then we do a little write-up. But instead of an obituary, which kind of be dry, we try to write about who they were and what they'll be remembered for and what made them laugh and all those little things, just to soften it up. And then people can get on there. They can leave comments, and then they can put a donation button on there if they want.
It's like a GoFundMe kind of a thing.
Kind of, sort of. Yeah. But for us, the money gets released a lot faster than GoFundMe, and we're a nonprofit, so the percent that is charged is way less. Yeah, and then we don't ask for a tip on top of it like some of the other websites will do. And so that's one of the ways that we work with the family to try to raise the money. And there are also little tips and tricks we do, right? So for instance, if they're going to have the funeral at, say, a church or a synagogue, then they don't really need a nice funeral home. So instead of going to the nice part of town, you can go to maybe a funeral home that's not in the nice part of town that's cheaper. Right. No one's going to see it. No one's going to know. All the funeral homes do the exact same thing. And so you can save some money by going through a different funeral home than the one on the nice side of town. Or, you can do a graveside service and no one ever sees the funeral home. So, there are little things you can do to try to cut corners here and save some money if need be. But again, everybody asks me, what's right. And I always tell them there's no right or wrong. It's just what's best for your family.
Right. Yeah. People, it's funny. It's funny how in situations like that, when it's like life-changing, whether it's big weddings or whether it's like funerals, people have this sense of guilt or need to have to put up a certain amount of money to somehow value the life of the person that they lost or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's tough. If you go to a Barnes & Noble, there are plenty of books on birth of a children or weddings or anniversary, like all the happy things people write about.
That's right.
But how to have a funeral or what to do in a funeral, I mean, those are few and far between because people don't like to think about it.
Yeah.
And you're right, it makes it tough.
There's no Funerals for Dummies book.
Exactly. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Are there any examples of how you've helped people, maybe a story that you could think of that's helped somebody personally bring their life back or professionally in their careers that have dealt with this?
Yeah, so one of the things that we have, a little motto we have is called from hurting to healing to helping. And so we had somebody come through that we assisted a few years back that lost her husband, and she went through our support programs. And then 2 years out, she came back and decided to volunteer to be a villager. So she came full circle all the way around, and that was really meaningful to see that she went through our entire program and then said, you know what, it's so good, I want to give back and I want to help and assist. And that was very meaningful for us and what we're doing to try to build Carsons Village.
That's huge. How many volunteers do you have, villagers do you have right now?
So we're in our third cohort. So I think in total, we've probably helped about 45 or 50 so far. So the number's low. We just started this thing about a year and a half ago.
Right.
So we had to develop the content. They've got to go through 20 hours of training to be certified to be able to get it. There's a lot of things they do, and it's a time commitment. So it's been tough to find volunteers that want to, give that kind of time.
Yeah.
Because you commit to talk to the family so many times, and you've got to do that for up to a year to make sure the family is getting all the support they need. So it's like every nonprofit, everybody's always looking for volunteers to help, and sometimes it's hard to find them.
I can imagine that although it's a big time commitment, a lot of people who have dealt with loss may not even realize that giving up their time to help with somebody else would actually help them in another way.
It's
very cathartic in that sense. It'll help them kind of move on. So I think a big part of it is just raising awareness for people who have dealt with this, that say that they have a way to help others if they want to. And I think that would be a good thing for people to know.
Well, that was a little bit of one of my aha moments. So my background, my undergrad is in civil engineering, and I have an MBA from Texas A&M. And I've never been in the social work business before. So this was all brand new to me. And before we started our group support sessions, we had just kind of a test run of 6 weeks just to see if people would come and what it would be like. And I was on the first one listening, and I just heard the emotions coming out of these people. And I realized that, when you lose somebody like a child or a husband or something, you tell your best friend once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6. After 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they're like, okay, I get it. Right. You're kind of bringing the party down a little bit. And so then you tend to close it off, and you still have those feelings, but you don't have an outlet anymore. And when I heard those people in our group support coming and just letting out all those emotions that they had pinned up, it really felt good to be able to provide that service to them free of charge. And then it also made me realize how, in a way, fortunate I am, because I get to talk about Carson every single day. I get to go, and never met you before, and I got to tell you all about Carson and my story. And I've told people my story so many times, and every time I tell my story, a little bit of the weight comes off my shoulders. And so I'm fortunate, quote unfortunate, in that regards, that I get to talk about Carson every day. And in a little way, he's not gone.
Right.
He's still around.
No, I mean, you made this deliberate choice to start this thing that's helped so many people. And so, to think that he is still around, because what that's brought to so many people and helped so many people is almost like, it's amazing how much it's helped that many people. So the work that effect has had this spiral effect that's helped so many people. So that's something.
Well, in the referrals, when I mentioned the 7,100 referrals, that's one family. So there's multiple people in each family. There's multiple extensions of those families. And then that doesn't even include all the extra work we've done for them after the fact through our continuing support, our programs, our group support, the peer-to-peer. I mean, all the things that we do. It expands, and it helps those folks tremendously.
Yeah. How's that experience of helping others through their darkest time influenced your outlook on life and the future?
Well, it kind of gets back to helping them helps me, a little bit, helping them, see them heal, see them get better. I mean, and everybody's journey is different, and it takes that person wanting to step forward and say, I want to try to get better. I need help. I need resources, but that's tough. That's really tough. And that's why we do outbound calls, because when we were originally sending emails, people weren't really responding to emails, but we do the outbound call, we talk to them, and then they know they can call us back. So we have that two-way communication, and seeing them get better, seeing our volunteer come back and be a villager, listening to the people when I talk to them, because you can just feel the weight coming off their shoulders. One year, I think it was our second year for North Texas Giving Day, we helped this woman. She was from Africa and came over, and she lost her baby, and she only had, I think, one family member that was here, and that was it. And when she went to the funeral, they had a picture, but it was her and her family member, and then the nurses from the hospital went. And I mean, she didn't have any money. We had to find all the resources to help her out. And about 8 months later, something like that, when North Texas Giving Day came around, she gave us $100. And that meant more to me than, I mean, that tells me what the impact we have on people's lives, and the what we do to help them get through those dark days. It's amazing. It really is amazing. And then I think they get better, we get better. When I have board meetings, I always start with a mission moment and talk about, the impact we've had on a family and what we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing. And it reminds you that there is some good in the world, and you can try to pay it forward as much as you can.
Yeah, and you're playing part of that you're doing something that's very noble that is helping so many people. What advice would you give to someone who feels stuck in their grief and doesn't know how to move forward?
I mean, you've got to ask, and that's the hard part. People like Carson manage to keep everything bottled in, and you can't do that. And there are you've got apps you can use. You've got toll-free numbers. You can call Carsons Village, and our toll-free number is 877-789-0722. You can call that and we'll help. But you've got to reach out and you've got to open yourself up, because no one's going to know unless you tell them. And then if you open up and you talk to people, I promise you, it makes you feel better. It takes that burden off your shoulders.
Absolutely.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree with that, personally speaking as well. Do you use that same method that you personally dealt with the loss of Carson, that method of dealing with the grief to help the same people managing their own grief? Is that the same kind of method that you used?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes. So what we do is we provide the tools. We give them the opportunity. I can't make them dial into my group support at night. I can remind them so many times that it's there. They've got to answer the phone when our villager calls them. We can give them the tools, but because we're virtual, I can't go and pick them up in a car and drive them to the counselor and make sure they're going to the counselor. So they've got to want to do it on their side. But as soon as they want to do it, step foot forward, we have plenty of resources that can help families and individuals that are struggling with their loss.
Jason, you're doing amazing work, man. Seriously,
Well,
seriously. Thank you. Can you tell everybody again where they can find the website and the phone number again, and any other resources they can?
Well, so our website's carsonsvillage.org, Carson with an S, village.org, and our toll-free number is 877-678-0722. And you know why 6 is scared of 7? It's our number.
Why?
Because 789.
I knew that one because I'm a dad and I got 2 kids.
Yeah. And I think I just messed the number up. It's 877-789-0722.
There it is.
I was trying to think of the joke and the number at the same time, and I got.
When you know a number so well and you actually start to think about it, it doesn't come out.
I was trying to remember the joke, and then the 0722 is Carson's birthday.
Yeah, I've got my credit card number memorized, but as soon as I actually start to think about the number, I have to just spit it out, and if I don't, then I can't remember.
You start.
Yeah, I start fudging it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.